Welcome to another episode of Euphoric the podcast. I'm sitting across from 5X certified coach Sammy Calandri. I'm so excited to get into our conversation. We are going to unpack what it means to have an inner critic that you change around into a voice of self-compassion. And Sammy, before we get into all of that today, how are you doing?
I am doing good. Obviously, super happy to be here and just chatting with a friend, a familiar face.
I know it's like we spend so much time together in the certification, and then, people graduate, and I'm just like, oh, I want to stay in touch with everybody. Like, it's just such a special family I think we create and cultivate there. And I'm so glad, like, to see you now on this podcast episode. So I can't wait to dive in.
Absolutely. No, I miss those weekly interactions for sure, but that's all right. I'll get you whenever I can, and this is the perfect opportunity.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Okay, so let's start a little bit about like your background. I know that going alcohol free was a big part of your journey and then becoming a coach. And also now you have this expertise on compassion, which I think is such a poignant conversation. So let's like start at the beginning. Like, how did you start to rethink your relationship with alcohol and how did that journey go for you?
Yeah, so alcohol's always been a really big part of my life. It's a big part of my family. Our holidays, our weekends, everything pretty much has always been surrounded by this. I mean, since I was very, very, very little. So it's kind of just always been like what you do. And I fell in love with it. I liked being wild and free and carefree and so it very much gave me this like party girl identity, how I fit in with everybody. But after years and years of doing that, I've always kind of had this little voice like telling me like this is what's holding you back. And it's something that I really need to be looking at more closely because I've watched it, over the years affect relationships and it was no longer sitting well with me. And I had a lot of anxiety. My body was just like screaming at me, like, you need to stop like this. And it was always, I mean, I had anxiety throughout the week, but it was always the worst on the Sundays, that anxiety. Um, and after like several episodes of blacking out, and having massive anxiety to where I even called 911 once to come to my house in front of my children because I was in a full-blown panic attack, I was like, I need help. I need help. I cannot keep going down this path. And I hopped online, and luckily I found like an anxiety toolkit. That was kind of like my first step into this world of mindfulness and this kind of healing journey that I went on. So it really started with my anxiety and getting help for that. I then sought out a therapist. I took several different courses online, and this was like in 2021, and I didn't stop drinking until 2024. So it was like this long journey of self-discovery, and I thought maybe I can moderate alcohol. I can be a mindful drinker. I can still make this work, but deep down in my heart, it was always the alcohol is the problem. And I knew that I would never focus on anything I was passionate about or anything that would bring me true fulfillment if I continued like on this path. Um, so then I finally quit drinking after so many podcast episodes, including this one, after so many books I've read. Alan Carr's Easy Way book was kind of like the final strand for me. I read that and I never touched alcohol again. And then that left me honestly, I would say like very empty at first because alcohol filled up all my time. So I had this huge void, and my inner critic was super ugly and super nasty. I had so much shame and just like, who am I now? And so I really started to look at that, and I was like, oh my gosh, like it's this compassion piece that I'm missing that I think so many people are missing. So yeah, now I am helping girls and women all around the world just start to love themselves more and really be much kinder and gentler to themselves.
Oh, wow. I love this story. And I think what's so poignant about it is that voice of intuition that just doesn't go away. And it's interesting because it's like questioning your relationship with alcohol had you go on this huge healing journey, even before the alcohol was like out of the way, like at the end, you know? And it's so interesting just like how our intuition just knows. Like, and that's why I'm sometimes perplexed by people who don't hear it. You know, it's like heard it so strong and I ignored it for a long time. So I wonder if a lot of people just hear it and ignore it, but it just keeps coming back. It keeps coming back. Your intuition just knows. And it was like the answer for you. Like you finally listened and it's like what helped you move through your anxiety and like start your personal development journey. And then, you know, towards that healing journey, you're like, okay, of course the alcohol is like still the last, you know, thing that doesn't fit this picture, right? And then to really just hear that voice and say like, you know what if I was done with this? What would look like? And I want to talk a little bit about the void because oftentimes when you ditch alcohol, like it could be a very euphoric period in your life. You could have that like pink cloud sensation, like everything changes, you know? But I think it's so true. Like what you're saying is like things change, and that kind of change is very uncomfortable and it can feel very unsettling. And you start to hit your upper limit of like how good can life be, but also, you know, you start to want to go back to like the old and stuff like that. So, how did you start dealing with that void that you're talking about? So, it's like the time needs to be filled. I'm sure it's like maybe different with your friendships, maybe even different with your partnership, like your identity changes. So, like, how did you work through all of that?
Yeah, so that was something I never expected. I was so proud of myself to get rid of alcohol. Um, But yeah, you're left with everything in your life. Well, I mean, if you drink the way I drink, you're left with everything in your life really looking so different. It's like, yeah, friendships are different, families different. And I was really like, I don't even know what I like to do because this is what's consumed all of my time and all of my energy. So it's kind of a scary place to be, right? And then that's when you have this like negative voice that it's like, you should be more by now. You should be better. You've removed the alcohol. Now, why isn't your life perfect? And then you question yourself, you're not grateful. You're all and I just had all this like negativity um, but a huge underlying thing for that was like, okay, like what's my purpose and my passion? I need to figure that out. That was just this circulating question over and over within the emptiness that kept coming up. Like, okay, you need to find what like truly fulfills you. So that's when I went on this journey of, okay, what is my purpose? What's my passion? I found you. It's opened me up to a whole new world. Like you said, I had already kind of done years of healing before I ever quit alcohol. Um, but obviously, we're a work in progress. There's always more to be done. And so, yeah, it was just now, okay, what is my passion? Where do I want to be? Where do I want to go with the rest of my life? And then a lot of that was dropping the shoulds. And like I was always told, you need to be this, you need to do that, look a certain way, have a certain job. And it was like, no, I'm tapping into, I think the reason why a lot of us don't have those voices or are able to tap into our intuition is because we're constantly told what we're supposed to be doing and we never listen to that voice. And I think that's why so many people are so overwhelmed and so burnt out because we're never slowing down long enough, never getting off autopilot long enough to figure that out.
Yeah. Oh, that's wild. And I like to see how like the universe is almost always orchestrating things for our benefit, you know? And it's interesting because I think for your case, your story, like if it wasn't for that void and it wasn't for that almost like existential crisis of like what am I, who am I now? Be like maybe that sense of like search and that yearning for that purpose and passion wouldn't have come out. You know what I mean? So it's like now you can see how the clues like line up from the past and how that helped you not only find what lights you up, but then become this spokesperson for other people. Like as you've healed your inner critic and that voice of negativity, now you're here to like help other people. And I can't wait to dive into that. But I'm just curious, like it seems like a very natural progression that once you heal yourself, you want to help other people. But I'm curious, like, what was it for you to actually say to yourself, yes, I want to become a coach and start that journey of like launching your business and everything like that? Like, was it truly like I found it, or like how did that come up for you, that piece of like, this is what was missing for me, and this is what is like the next step for me?
Yeah, during my time of trying to get sober on this healing journey, I felt really, really alone a lot. And it was really hard to even kind of find in the podcasts and in the books, like to find me and find my story. And so I just had this loneliness, and all I yearned for was to like see myself in somebody else's story or connect. Um, so really, I don't want anybody to ever feel that. And I think there just needs to be more of us showing up authentically in the world, because I don't know about you, but like when somebody shows up just authentic and real and talks about the shit, like it's so refreshing. And that was just, I think that pain and that loneliness was such a driving force to be like, no, I want to make a difference. This is really, truly meaningful to me. And it's funny, it was there all along. I was looking back through like journal notes from 5 years ago saying how I wanted to host retreats. I had no idea like that was even there. And then that's like where I want to be. I want to bring women together. And then also, like, I was a psychology major. Like, the mind has always been so fascinating to me. So it's just kind of funny. It was always there. It was me slowing down long enough, listening to my thoughts, and listening to my intuition and actually acting on it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's like your deeper why was serving that past version of you. Like no one else should ever have to go through this, like loneliness and confusion and stuff. And it's so motivating. And then I love to see like the clues too. Like it was always there, you
Mhm.
know? I had
Yeah.
that sense too. Like I remember reading self-help books before I went alcohol free, and I was just like, I want to be that person. Like I
Mhm.
want the self-help book, you know?
It is wild. It's like, yeah, all these clues. And I think, yeah, no, it is just crazy looking back, like, wow, this was here all along. So,
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of my work is not creating a new you, not finding, but it's really coming back to you, like what's been there all along. We have so many programs on change and transformation. And what I really want is like people to find themselves and what makes them tick and what makes them feel good.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the shoulds, right? So it's like we grow up and we just layer should upon should upon should upon should. And so like in your experience, like where do you think a lot of the shoulds come from, and where were they like for you? Like whose shoulds were you listening to before that you had to like unpack to be able to hear that voice of your own?
Oh, that's such a good question, and it's so exhausting. Just, I mean, even just on a cultural and societal stance, like, I mean, everything that we were taking in all day long, whether it's social media or whether it's on the TV, billboards, magazines, we don't even notice it, but subconsciously we're taking in, we need to be thinner, we need to be prettier, we need to be richer, we need to work harder. Um, I mean, so that's happening to all of us. But then also, having parents that are also very conditioned as well, not their fault. It's the world we live in, but them wanting to be smaller, and me seeing that growing up, them wanting to please others, them wanting everything to look, perfect. So you internalize those things as that's what's important, appearing as perfect, acting as though you're perfect. And yeah, at some point, like I couldn't keep up with it anymore. And I think a lot of people can't, and that's why they're so just burnt out and exhausted.
Yeah. So it's like the appearance you're talking about. How did that also figure into like your parenting journey as like you start, you grew up with these shoulds from your family, from also the society at large, and then you become a parent yourself. And so like how do you break out
Mm.
of those like past role models that some parts of them weren't serving us and create kind of like your own new version of like not only authentic self, but also like the roles that we do play in the world, right? Whether you're a mom or like an employee or sister or all that kind of stuff. Because I'm sure that must be like, there's so much mom guilt in this world, right?
Oh my gosh. Well, let me tell you, it is extremely, extremely difficult because yeah, you're raised a certain way for so many years. And then I'm starting this healing journey as I'm having kids, which they were a huge catalyst for that, you know, a lot of my reasonings and my why. But I don't want to pass down my trauma, you know, I don't want them to look in the mirror and hate themselves. I don't want them to think that being rich is what's important. I don't want them to think that beauty is what's important. Um, so that's where that mindfulness piece comes in. If you don't slow down enough to start like making those changes, I mean, as simple as I grew up this way. I'm sure you probably did too. Like constantly, our parents telling us, stop whining, stop crying, you know. And I mean, what is that? Bottle it up. Don't show your emotions. You know, so that's like a big thing I focus on. I don't ever tell my kids that. I don't tell them to stop whining, stop crying. Like, let's get to why are they whining? Why are they crying? You know, and then also I can't sit in the mirror and berate myself, you know. I can't complain to my weight to my husband, you know, in front of my children. It's making those little shifts because if they see me do that, that's what they're gonna do.
Yeah.
Um, so it really is being conscious and really slowing down. And that's another thing with alcohol. When you have that alcohol in your life, you aren't mindful, you aren't conscious. You're really just surviving.
Yeah. I've heard this advice from like so many wise people. It's like slow down and like listen to yourself, right? So it's like sometimes the most obvious things are also the hardest.
Oh, mm-hmm.
So like how would you actually help someone do that?
Okay. I love that you just said that because I remember when this notion of like noticing your thoughts when I was working through this in therapy. I'm like, what does that even mean? Notice my thoughts. Are you crazy? And that's what my whole self-love lab is about because even that first chunk right there is so, so difficult. But I want people to think about, okay, when I'm in front of the mirror, what are my thoughts? What are my first thoughts that come through? When I'm doing the dishes, let's pause and think, what am I thinking about right now? You know, we're on autopilot all day long. A lot of the time, we don't even notice our thoughts. But, you know, before I go to bed, what am I thinking about when I wake up in the morning? Sometimes in the beginning, I would set a timer to like go off and just be like, check in. Okay, check in with myself. What was I just thinking about? You know, how's my day going? How am I feeling? I mean, I think we go throughout our entire days with ever asking ourselves that. So it's really having these check-ins of, okay, what am I thinking about? What do I need? That's another thing. We don't ever ask ourselves like what we need. So that's kind of the first component is really noticing these thoughts.
Yeah. Okay, so let's imagine I notice my thoughts and I have a very nasty inner critic coming out, right? So like, the last month's goals didn't get me or I, didn't make as much progress as I wanted to in this area of my life or, like I gained a few pounds, like whatever is coming out, it's nasty, it's mean, and it's just proning on kind of picking myself apart. So like, where do you go from there?
Yes. So then I like to walk my clients through. And a lot of people don't understand, and I'm going to explain why we do this. But then you want to name your thoughts, give it a name. Mine is Negative Nancy. The name that you give these negative thoughts, so you're naming your inner critic. Maybe it would be an old coach that maybe was really awful to you. Maybe it's a parent. But I want you to name the thoughts, who these thoughts are. To personify it really creates some space from the thought and makes it feel like it's not consuming us. We create that space. So once we notice these really negative thoughts, we're going to name it. And then after that is when we go into like investigating it. Okay, why am I having this thought? So when you said like you gained a few pounds. Okay, so, okay, I gained a few pounds. What does that mean to me? And what does that mean about me? And start to really like question these things. And that also helps to create space. Why do I think that gaining a few pounds is bad? Okay, because the messaging or society. So you start to, okay, understand. Now it's not that you're the problem and that your thoughts are the problem. You're starting to really understand why you have these thoughts. And when you do that, you can feel better rather than doubling down on shame and being like, oh my God, I'm a horrible person now for having these thoughts. So, and then after we do that, we can reframe it. And then that's my favorite part is when we start to reframe our thoughts. And a lot of people, if it's easiest, they will just try on the opposite thought. Or my favorite, because it just really hits home for me, um, is I think of what I would say to my daughter. If she came
Mhm.
to me and said, Mom, I've gained a few pounds, or Mom, I didn't um, work through, I didn't meet my goals this month, I think about what I would say to her. And what I would say to her is something much more uplifting, much more encouraging, is not whatsoever what I would say to myself. And then you literally have to then say that to yourself.
Yeah.
Or, and if you don't have a daughter, it doesn't need to be, your daughter, it could be a close friend or a loved one. But then really flip that and then say, Samantha, and reverse it and put it on yourself. So, and when we can start to do that in the beginning, it's super sticky, it's super muddy. It's like, am I doing this right? Like meditation, right? Am I doing this right? But the more you practice it, it really like changes the outcome of your day. And you change these thoughts, it changes your actions, and then you just make so much better choices for yourself.
Yeah, I love it. It's like something so tangible. Instead of just like reframe your thoughts or change your thoughts, it's like, no, like imagine literally saying this to your child and how different you would say it too. And again, for people who aren't maybe parents yet or aren't parents at all, imagine like your 6-year-old self, right? And then like
Mhm.
it's almost like a joy of like reparenting yourself of all the times like you didn't get the love or you were told the wrong message or you just absorb things from culture throughout our social conditioning. It's like how can I reparent and really amplify the love and the compassion because like there's nothing wrong with that little girl or that little boy for the guys listening, but mostly the little girl, right? And so, what do you think is like, how do you notice your life and like kind of more your inner landscape? How do you notice it different after doing this work versus before when it was, there wasn't this kind of framework you could lean on and kind of unpack these things with?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was just no sense of inner peace. It was just one thing after another. These negative thoughts stacked on negative thoughts just created more overwhelm, more stress, um, led to, unhealthy coping mechanisms. And now it's like a self-soothe. I'm now able to soothe myself, regulate my nervous system, and then rather maybe turning to food to cope or turning to alcohol to cope, I'm able to be like, no, what do I need in this moment truly? And when I'm able to reframe those thoughts, then I can make like the next best choice for myself. So now my days just are much lighter and just that more just sense of peace throughout the day.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds like what everyone's looking for. So someone does this like once or twice, but it's really hard to like remember to do these kinds of things, especially because we're always trying to improve. So it's like there's like by the time you've read a few books, you have like 10 things you're trying to remember to do every day. So you kind of mentioned this a little earlier, but I want to go back to it. Like, how do you remember to do this work? Especially because our thoughts are so unconscious sometimes that like, we just get on this train and we don't even notice we're on the train and it just like goes and
Mhm.
spirals. So like, what are the little points that you have either in your day or is there like some kind of anchoring that you do to just like remember to remember?
Right, remember to remember exactly. Yeah, so I just call it like check-ins, and for some reason, I really remember when I start to get stressed and overwhelmed, it's like, oh, okay, like, what is it you need, Sam? Like, what is, kind of like what's going on? What are your thoughts doing right now? Um, but like I said in the beginning, I really did have to like set alarms, like set reminders every 4 hours to kind of do a check-in and figure out what I'm thinking about, where my thoughts are at. Um, but I also think it's easier also if, yeah, you maybe pick some points during the day, maybe at lunchtime. Let's try to remember to do this. Or my thoughts spiral at night when I'm doing the dishes. That's like such a big one, or like doing the laundry. So maybe when you're doing like tasks like that, I know it's hard when we're at work and we're go, go, go nonstop, but I think having a right when you wake up, a check-in, a lunch, check-in, and like when you're doing some tasks at home later on, check in during those times. And it is sticky and muddy and difficult in the beginning, but it really just starts to flow and you're able to do it without ever even putting effort into it
Yeah,
that you
I
want
can
to
see
get
that.
to. And it takes time, like anything, it takes time.
Yeah. But it's like the outcome of having that peace and that like inner landscape not being so chaotic all the time, or at least having this method to be able to process it. Like you said, if the trigger is that you're stressed, instead of just allowing that emotion and that fear and that, pent up tension to like carry you away, it's like that's the perfect time to do it and probably diffuse some of it right then and there. Um, and so we hear this word self-compassion a lot. And it's often this like, like you said, be kinder, be gentler to yourself. And I really can pick that up when you talk about like talking to your inner child or like your daughter and stuff like that. And so some people also think that self-compassion means like you're not like if you're not hard on yourself, you're not going to then achieve the things that you want to achieve. So like what do you think about self-compassion and how does that play into this? And if it's all just kind of this like Mother Teresa like everything's fine, you're great kind of thing, like how do you still feel like ambitious and like want to actually change instead of just stay stuck in the thing that's maybe not like serving you? So like I know it's a nuanced conversation, obviously, but like, what is your take on that?
No, I love that you brought it up. We live in such a hustle culture that is all about go, 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 work hard. You're not going to amount to anything if, you don't keep going. And it's awful. It's awful. But what I would say about that is when you can slow down and allow yourself rest, and I know also our culture, like rest equals lazy, right? No, but when you can slow down long enough to give yourself what you truly need and have this compassion, it opens up space for more creativity, for more hard work. You know, the other just leads to burnout, and you're not truly or getting to the thing, that you're striving for and it not being enough and you needing the next and the next. So this compassion piece, if you can carry this theme throughout, then not only you don't lose sight of what's like really important to you, your values stay intact, but also for me, it's opened up so much more space and energy to then be creative, to then work hard, to then push towards the things I want. Because if not, if I just go, 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 I was really good at that. I'm really good at that. I can push through just about anything. I have a therapist for my issues with productivity, okay? Because I have my worth tied to my productivity. Um, but it's this self-compassion that allows me to do so much more, actually, to do so much more.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is like a nuanced thing you said that a lot of us think, if we accept ourselves and we love ourselves, that we're like giving up. So wild. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about giving up. I'm talking about taking care of all of you, mind, body, and soul.
Yeah. Well, I love how you said too. It's like there has to be enough trust that giving yourself this space, this rest, this
Mm.
self-compassion, however it looks like, is actually the ticket to more creativity and then to another like spur of hard work. And it's something I've also had to learn the hard way because like I do feel guilt sometimes when I rest. And so I've had to like really renegotiate that kind of relationship also between like productivity and worth and validation and all that kind of stuff. And every time I give myself the rest, even though sometimes it feels uncomfortable, like I come out of it just swinging, like so excited, so much creativity, all that good stuff. So it's like I know myself well enough to know like this is how it works, Carolina. It's like a valley and then a mountain and a valley and a mountain. And without it, like you said, either you wouldn't achieve it anyway because you're gonna burn out and just give up. Or maybe you will achieve it, but do you want it to be like hard and sucky journey, like filled with so much pressure, or do you actually want it to feel good? And I think that's really key in business as well, because like, on the journey of entrepreneurship, like there's so much there's so much fear that happens. So a lot of people procrastinate. And there's also this like pressure that we put on ourselves. And like when it's coming from the wrong way, like it is also the recipe for burnout and just like, why am I even doing this at the end of the day type of a thing, you know what I mean? Because it's all in your head. Like, especially as an entrepreneur, like you don't have a boss or anyone else who's like putting the pressure necessarily on you. It's like totally self-imposed. And have you noticed that coming up for you on your own entrepreneurship journey as you have to like navigate like exactly what you're an expert on in onto yourself as like, there is literally no boss like waiting for you. There is like every goal that you have is also your own choice type of a thing. And so like how do you manage that? Like say if you don't meet a goal 1 month, like what would you say?
Yeah, well, I think you really nailed it when you said the trust. I feel like so much about this is self-trust. And for years, I let myself down. So it took a lot to build that trust back up, you know? So you kind of have to, that's a whole nother layer of something you have to work towards is like this trust and believing that, if you are following your intuition, following the next best step, that, you are gonna make the right decisions. Um, as yeah, an entrepreneur, because yeah, we do make our own schedules. And what did you say? Not hitting a goal. Yeah, so if that comes up, oh yeah, I have my long, long to-do list. But I'm just thinking, like you said, this is a journey and it is supposed to be enjoyable. And if I'm not enjoying it, I'm not going to keep doing it, And then also not forgetting the reasons why we're doing this. Sometimes I'll get so caught up in the work, my husband will come home and say, "Hey, let's go to lunch." And I'm like, "No, no, no. I have too much to do, XYZ." But then I sit and think, but wait, this is why I've created this life. I'm creating this life so I can do exactly that, go to lunch and do these things. So then also like allowing yourself to do that. I mean, obviously, if you're at work, you can't, or there's certain things that obviously you can't leave. But I'm working a lot with that. Like, okay, put down the pen, Sam. Like, you can go. And then, yes, I go and have that lunch, have a great time, and then I'm just fueled up for the next thing. So I think sometimes we forget to enjoy the process along the way, for sure.
Yeah. It's almost like the difference between achieving goals through pleasure versus through pressure,
Mm,
And it's like you can do both things, but which one would you actually rather do, right?
yeah, absolutely. I'll take
Yeah.
pleasure. I'll take pleasure.
I wonder, like this could be so like there's so many through lines here, obviously, with like any goal attainment, entrepreneurship, obviously, also the alcohol-free journey, like, and I think that is something that people like tear their hair out over sometimes. I mean, not literally, but that the idea like I'm a failure, I'm never gonna have this work. Like I didn't drink for 2 weeks and then I drink this weekend, I'm such a loser, you know what I mean? And it's like for those of us who are like, alcohol free, and it's like, oh no, that's just part of the journey. Like it's okay. Like you're gonna get there. You know what I mean? And it's like if something in your soul really wants you to be alcohol free, you will arrive, right? And so like, do you have to put all this pressure on yourself? Do you have to make it mean something so negative about yourself if you don't like achieve something or, meet a certain milestone or something like that? And I think that's like a really nice way to see this as well. Is like the self-compassion thing can blend into so many territories. You talked about body image already, parenting as well. Like there's a difference between how you're parenting from like maybe the previous generation, but how do you also navigate when you say do erupt at your children or you do say something or do something that you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I knew that, or maybe you didn't make enough time for them or something like that. So like when you're feeling the guilt as a parent, how can you take this a step further?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I put a, I mean, I'm always a work in progress, but I put a lot of pressure on myself to be perfect, for my kids, but I'm realizing that's not what they need whatsoever. So, if I am harsh with them, if I do yell at them, I am learning to I can apologize and I can be wrong and I can say that I'm wrong. I think so many parents can't do that and can't take, that accountability and acknowledge that. Um, I think it's really important for our kids to see that we're not perfect and that we're not human and that we do make mistakes. And then, they're learning how do you handle those mistakes? Okay, and they see that I was able to apologize. I got way too loud with my voice. That's not what I should have done. And having that conversation with them. And I think it's just really important that they see us make mistakes and that they see how we handle those mistakes. And with the mom guilt, you really have to remember, I mean, if you're even listening to this, you're probably a pretty incredible person. If you're a mom listening to a mom podcast about mom guilt, you're a pretty incredible person, obviously. So in those times where you're feeling really guilty, there's moms out there that aren't putting out nearly half the effort that you're doing. And give yourself some grace. You're a human for the very first time, too. And you're doing your best. And your kids are going to see that, feel that, um, so I think, yeah, compassion is really the center of all of this, being kind towards yourself. And when you model that and your kids see you being kind towards yourself, they can do the same. And I know a lot of moms think like self-love, or self-care and all that is selfish. Absolutely not. And do it in front of your kids, so they can see, okay, this is how mom takes care of herself. I want to take care of myself too, and this is how I take care of myself. So it's really like a trickle down effect, and I think it's really important.
I think you hit on something so important just there. Like, we have to imagine, the type of child we're creating into the future. And so, if your idea of being a perfect mom is like always people pleasing and always taking care of everyone, what do you think your daughter is going to do 20 years from now when she's like a mom herself, too? Right. And so, like, even though you think you're doing the best because you're like everything to everyone and like never selfish and you never need time to yourself and you're like super mom, you're literally just imposing a should onto your daughter or, whatever for 20 years, 30 years from now. And so I think that like clicks something. Like
Oh,
they're alone, it's just like I don't have to be perfect. In fact, what I'm doing is harming them in the future because then they think they have to be perfect too. And I think that's like the coolest way to really have it sink in?
yeah, 100%, 100%. Let them see you make mistakes. Let them see you be human. Let them see how you deal with that. Because, yep, I mean, I dealt with a mom and family that they were very, very perfect, And then so then I went into life, being very, very perfect. And it's not sustainable and it's crushing. So yeah, I think it's so important to not try and make everything perfect for your kids. That's not the world we live in.
Yeah.
And it is going to do more harm than good.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a good nugget right there. Okay, I think we could talk forever, but I want to be sure that we also give a chance for the audience to learn more about you. So if someone wants to reach out, find you, get your self-love lab, where can people find more information?
Yes, absolutely. So you can find me on Instagram, Samantha Nicole Mindset Coach. And I have a link tree there where they can find my coaching, my lab, and I have tons of free resources. I have a free resource library, so I'd love for all the listeners to go over and snag that. Who doesn't like free? And then my website is samantha-nicole.com where you can find all the same things there. So I would love to connect me if you're dealing with a harsh inner critic, crippling mom guilt, anxiety, all the things. I've lived it, I've been through it. And yeah, I want to support you.
Yeah. Well, this episode definitely unlocked a few things for me too. Just a few
Yeah.
ahas I've had. So good.
Heck,
We'll be sure to put all those links in the show notes so you can go check Sammy out. And just so cool. Like, we got to spend the 10 months together in the certification. I love your work. I love what you're doing and putting out there in the world. We got to connect at the retreat too. How was that for you, by the way, coming to Palm Springs and everything?
oh my gosh, the retreat just sealed the deal. Everything was absolutely beautiful and perfect. I've literally made friends for life. Me and Laura talk once a week. I have girlfriends that I'll have forever that truly get me, understand me. I appreciate what you're doing so much. It's truly, truly wonderful.
Well, I love to hear that. And if you are interested in the next round of the certification, we do start in the spring of 2026. So that is
Oh,
a few months away, but do be sure to get on the wait list if you're interested. Sammy, this was such a good conversation, I think, for moms, for anyone struggling with body image, and just like who doesn't have that like really, really sharp inner critic, because maybe that is the voice of a parent or a teacher or someone in us who kind of, steered us the wrong way with the shoulds and making us feel like we're always wrong. And I think like it's the most mature and wise place that we arrive in our lives to like recognize that it's just our intuition that is the wisest person in the room, and we can learn from other people and we can model other people and all that kind of stuff. But once something is telling us that we're wrong and that we're made to feel wrong, I think that's when like it steers the wrong way. And that way we start, denying ourselves and the inner critic, and it's just such a mess and stuff like that. And so I love your method, how you're able to like bring it back. And just I'm gonna remember that too. Like what would you say to your inner, child or your daughter if you have one? Because there's just like no easier way to, I think, like understand it than that, you know?
I love that. But yeah, whatever resonates, for you, run with that because it works a little different for everybody. But oh, it's so important, and we got to be kinder to ourselves.
Yeah.
Hard. Things
Yeah.
are hard, so we got, we have to take care of ourselves first, for sure.
Well, I love it so much. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. And hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, okay?
Thank you so much. Bye.